This looks like the shed. It's a huge shed. Yep, there's cars in here. Not even locked. Wow. That's more than just a car collection. It's a joint's full of muscle cars. Let's check them out. Unreal. Well, when the owner said he had a car collection, I had no idea that he was talking about a collection like this. This massive chook shed here is chock-a-block full of muscle cars. I've had a look around. I reckon there'd be between 90 and 100 very desirable cars here. This guy knew what he was buying. I've got a lot of ground here to cover, so I'm going to try and do as much as I can for you on as many cars as I can cover. This car here caught my eye first, and this is a very important car too, the 1967 XR GT Falcon. The reason it's important, it's because this car started the muscle car scene in Australia. Before this thing came out, there was mainly six-cylinder sedans and a lone AP6 V8 Valiant, which wasn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but they were nothing like these things. So Ford Australia decided they were going to come out and smash the opposition, and they did. And these cars were designed to do one thing, and that was to go out and win the Galahar 500, Bathurst. And guess what? They did. They came across the line in first place, and that changed history forever. They're an awesome piece of machinery, these things. They put a lot of effort into them. They called them Mustang bred. They had the legendary 289 Windsor under the hood. They had a 4-speed heavy-duty manual trans and a heavy-duty rear end. The other unique thing with these XR GT Falcons too is you could get them in one colour only, GT Gold. There was a small batch of Galahar Silver GT Falcons that came out for the Galahar Cigarette Company for the promotion of Bathurst. Other than that, it had to be gold. And after the XR came the XT-GT. Now, leading GT Ford expert David Frake from GT Ford Performance tells me the XT-GT was one of the best GT Falcons to drive out of the whole GT Falcon range. I know that might sound hard to believe. You've got your legendary GT Phase 3s and all the rest of it, but he reckons this was the most refined car to drive out of the whole lot. Its little 230 horsepower 302 Windsor was a beautiful upgrade. They had more appointments in the interior. They were just upgraded in certain areas to make the whole car drive a little bit better than the more raw XR GT. Now, unfortunately, the XT GT didn't share the same success at Bathurst that the XR GT did. The Ford factory team were doing extremely well, but they got a hole in the radiator. The car popped a head gasket, and unfortunately the race was over for them. Up until that point, they were doing extremely well and looking very promising for the win. And then, of course, there's the early Holden Monaros, GM's answer to Ford. And they came out all guns blazing too, using the almighty small block Chevy. The HK 327, which also had Bathurst success, right through to this HT 350 Monaro here. They won Bathurst with Colin Bond at the wheel, with the newcomer at that time, Peter Brock, coming third behind the wheel of the next Holden Monaro. They're a great thing. The 350 cubic inch small block Chevy in these HTs, the Muncie gearbox, the 12-bolt rear end. They were tough as nails and mighty fast and had a beautiful body style as well. They're an extremely desirable car in this age. Very rare to find a good one in good nick. This car here is surprisingly in very good condition bodily-wise from what I can see. It's not hanging out with rust considering it's very close to the elements in this shed. Well, there's definitely no shortage of early Monaros here, that's for sure, with this HG 350 Monaro. The HG 350 was really just a bit of an updated or facelifted version of the HT 350 Monaro. Didn't really have any Bathurst heritage because this was the XU1's day, of course, but still a fantastic car and very sought after. I've got to say the 350 small block was a great choice for these cars because they were very, very tough. As anyone knows, it's very hard to kill a small block Chevy. You can rev the daylights out of those things, make fantastic power, and they just keep on going. Now, whilst the majority of these 350 Monaros in the early vintage came out with manual transmissions, believe it or not, some did actually come out with a Power Glide automatic transmission option. I can tell you for a fact, my brother-in-law actually owned one, and that car was legit. We've even got an advert in a magazine that proves it. The XW Falcon GT, an interesting car for sure. With your standard XW GT models, you also had your GT HO models. The early Phase 1 or HO, as it may have been called by some, was an interesting car too. It had a hot 351 Windsor, straight out of the Ford Performance Parts catalogue out of the US in the day, ordered by none other than Al Turner, who was heading the race teams in that day and age. The little 351 Windsor would go forever and a day without failure, and they perform like you wouldn't believe. Excellent torque out of corners, rev the daylights out of night and day, they just go and go and go. The Phase 2 GT-HO, of course, was a different story. They had a big, angry 351 Cleveland and a big camshaft. All the gear, they made awesome power, and they were a bit of a pig of a thing to drive too, which added to the excitement. Had some great racing success, but they were a little bit fragile in the early days and did blow up on the odd occasion. Either way, I reckon the XW is a fantastic thing. Here's a car that's high on my agenda when it comes to muscle cars in the Holden scene. This HQ GTS 350 two-door Monaro. A great looking car. Yes, no racing heritage, but hey, who cares? They're a sensational looking piece of machinery. Holden put millions of dollars into the HQ Holden range. They did a fantastic job. I reckon these things are probably one of the best looking body styles that GM ever did in those early years. A great looking car. They only had a low compression 350.